Welcome back to the Brothers Mahoney. This is Michael.
And I am James.
And today we are discussing the season finale of Doctor Who that happened just, like an hour and a half ago or so, being The Reality War, which aired today, May 31st, 2025, and is written by Russell T Davies. Believe me, you could tell.
Indeed, you could, and this was the second part of the Westworld Reality War 2 part, the season finale. And it was something else, wasn't it, Michael?
You ain't lying. The plot is as such. Battle rages across the skies as the Rani's plan comes to fruition. The Doctor, Belinda, and Ruby have to risk everything in the quest to save one innocent life, which I guess is an okay summation, but whatever. Honestly, a lot of people appeared in this, and I would argue that a lot of the names I'm about to mention don't matter all that much. But we had Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor, Varada Sethu as Belinda, Millie Gibson as Ruby, Archie Punjabi as the Rani, Anita Dobson as Mrs. Flood, Gemma Radgrave as Kate Lethbridge Stewart, Ruth Madeley as Shirley, Jonah Howard King as Conrad, Susan Trist returns as Susan Triad. We have Rose popping up, played by Yasmin Finney, and she didn't appear in the previous episode. And there are people speculating about that. So she is indeed here, as much as that means, and it doesn't mean much.
She's just the human equivalent of the Lynx anyway.
It's a good comparison. Bonnie Langford as Mal, and a surprise return appearance. Not Susan. No, she's not here. Don't expect Susan here. And also don't expect Rogue here either, because he's also not here. Surprise return appearance of Staff Diwali playing Anita, who we last saw, and in fact only saw in Joy to the Warlord.
Speaking of Joy to the Warlord, we actually get Joy coming back as a star.
During the Doctor's drum roll regeneration scene. But hey, we don't talk about that. But we will. But not right now. But be warned.
We should have been warned before we started this.
We would have watched it anyway, no matter how many warnings we would have gotten. But we actually started this for the first time our season pretty much as soon as it dropped on Disney Plus. So it was nice to be with the crowd for once. It's fun. I really liked Anita in George of the World. I think she was one of the few pretty good things about that episode. And it's fun to see her here. And she was here under some time hotel capacity type stuff. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Not much. It's not like she does a lot. Honestly, and I'm not joking, her main purpose in this episode is to hold the door open. And I'm not saying it wasn't an important door to hold open, but that's pretty much it, bro.
Could you imagine the call she got to come back? Yeah, you're going to be holding the door open, and that really is it.
I still want to know how they got Carol and Ford back, to be honest. Hey, yeah, we're going to shoot like one scene of you and use it for like 15 seconds throughout 2 episodes. Have fun, bro. But yeah, I have things to say about that. But hey, we have a lot to say about this one too. So on the whole, before we get into the nitty-gritty, is this better than Empire of Death or not? And I'll be honest, I'm still somewhat torn. Like, I'm leaning toward yes, but it's certainly arguable either way. And I've seen discourse online saying that this was indeed one of the worst episodes of Doctor Who in recent times, which isn't entirely unfair, but it's just a complicated thing.
Yeah, in my position, it's how to look at this as a two-parter when you consider the fact we've already recorded a discussion on part 1. So obviously, it'll be best to look at this as a two-parter, but I'm not sure I can do that. But even if I did, I think I like this one a little more than Empire of Death. Maybe? I think, less angry with this one than I was the whole Ruby's mother mystery being explained. I say explained in quotation marks because Miss Galbitz, I can't get over the fact that, she pointed and she named her, but she didn't name her. All of that was Galbitz. And to be so, there was Galbitz in this, but I think on the whole, less Galbitz and just more what the fuck. I think it's a fair way to describe it. So in conclusion, I think this is battle, but the fact that I don't know and the fact that I really didn't like the last part of the previous season finale 2-parter, it says a lot. Obviously, Russell hypothetically has a plan, but I'm getting very tired of waiting for his plan to actually go anywhere.
And at this point, it's not clear to me that we will see his plan go anywhere. Now, I forgive he's one of the showrunners behind the war between the land and sea. I honestly can't remember. But I would imagine that's not going to have much to do with any of this stuff. I mean, it might have to do with some of the unit stuff, but I have to imagine a lot of the questions and concerns we have are not going to be addressed there. Unless you think the new Doctor is going to show up somewhere there in a surprise appearance. I did consider that. I guess it's possible, but I don't know. I sort of doubt, like right now, I sort of doubt that.
I think it would be a huge mistake to have the new Doctor question mark pop up in that spin-off. There are some people who don't even know it's a spin-off because it hasn't really been marketed right. I mean, I barely knew about it. I didn't even know the Sea Devils were involved. I thought the title was more esoteric. But no, it's actually, I guess, a war between land and sea. There's apparently some new Sea Devil redesigns. I haven't seen them. I'm sure there'll be something.
Yeah, I'm not sure either, but my point is that we don't really know if, like honestly, as far as I know, we don't know if there's going to be any more to Russell T Davies' continuation of the series. We have no dates for like any upcoming Doctor Who stuff. And yeah, we might know who the quote-unquote new Doctor is, but it doesn't mean much because we have no idea what or if anything's coming back anytime soon. So right now, this is what we have.
And we have to judge on what we have. That's the thing with these long season or even whole arcs for a writer. We can't judge this episode on something Russell T Davies might tell us in 3 years.
Yeah, we can't be hopeful. Like, we could judge it based on, yeah, maybe season 3 is going to reveal that the master of the land of fiction's behind it, which I increasingly wish was true. But if season 3 does do that, does it change how we feel about this one? I mean, it can't. So,
yeah, I mean, it comes to the question. Let's say there's a perfect, I say perfect. Let's say there's a really good episode to finish off a hypothetical season 3 that tied in all of these pieces together and actually explained them in a fair way. Maybe not a great way, but at least a fair way where we could look at it and say, you know what? I can buy that. You know what? That's fine. I can accept that. At the end of the day, that's all I want. That's all I've ever wanted. Writing that actually gives a damn. But even if that happened, and even if it retroactively fixed some elements of what came before, it wouldn't actually change how good those episodes stand on their own. There's only so much that can do. If this was all in the land of fiction or something akin to that, I could go with that. If it turns out there's somebody who is a god of stories and they've been doing a fictionalized Doctor Who thing, I could roll with that. And they could even, quote-unquote, fix it by saying, oh yeah, no, that was a bad story in regards to Ruby's mystery. I was lazy at the time. They could be a little cheeky like that, but they wouldn't actually fix the story itself. No matter what happens, the whole Ruby's mother just pointed normally at the sign, which magically wasn't there in the first place. That's always going to be garbage, no matter if there's a cheeky reference to it in the future. And I get the terrible suspicion that Russell T Davies actually liked that Ruby answer. So I don't know. It's no matter what happens, we have what we have, and we have to discuss it as it is.
But it's not all bad. One thing that I particularly liked, and I believe, James, you also enjoyed in this one, was the characterization of the Rani. Now, I think it's fair to say that the Rani didn't have that much to do in the episode. Like, most of the big thoughts were wrapped up with like 35 minutes in, which might sound strange. You might be thinking, what, the Doctor took care of the Rani and Omega in 30 minutes? Yes. But it makes sense in context in a way.
Not really, but...
Well, I'm sure it did what they called. But the Rani's characterization, I think, was pretty on point.
Yeah, Michael had some concerns with the Rani last episode, and I share them to an extent about how she's a little enthusiastic and exuberant about her plan coming to fruition when normally you would expect her to be a little more dispassionate. But in this episode, I think she was in full form. As a Rani, I would recognize as a true successor to the original Rani we saw in Mark of the Rani. Because as she was talking to the Doctor in the unit headquarters, I mean, that whole scene with the Rani, I think is almost perfect. She, for the entire time, she felt like she was a Time Lord. And furthermore, as most Time Lords do. Keep in mind, well, I say keep in mind, you wouldn't know this if you hadn't watched and or listened to our discussion about the Apocalypse element. But the Apocalypse element was a Sixth Doctor Big Finish audio. Neither Michael nor I actually laughed it out that much or even liked it in some cases. Nonetheless, it was an audio and we discussed it. And in the audio, we see that Time Lord Society literally did not allow non-Time Lords, non-Gallifreyans onto the planet or into the Citadel or however that went. I forget the exact specifics. Point is, they are in fact that xenophobic. And in this episode, we see the Rani just full force having that attitude because there's the whole issue with Poppy, and we'll talk about that, believe me, where the Rani wanted Time Lord DNA, and somebody points out, well, why did they just take Poppy? Because she's supposedly the Doctor's daughter. And the Rani just completely brushed that off, saying that she wanted to do that because of her mother, who is supposedly Belinda, and that Poppy was contaminated because she was half human. And it completely fits in with the Rani as we know her. As she says in this episode, she calls humans beasts, she calls humans cattle. She considers herself and the Doctor and all other Time Lords to be a species much higher than humans, and to be so, in many ways, she's not wrong. I don't know, I thought her entire attitude towards humans, towards Mrs. Flood, towards the Doctor, towards her plans in regards to Omega, all of that just really worked wow for me. And it's extremely disappointing that she left the way she did, because there is so much potential with this rendition of the Rani.
Yeah, and we got to see the Rani meet Mal face to face, which I thought was sort of amusing. If people haven't seen Classic Who, Time and the Rani, which is often considered among one of the worst stories of Classic Doctor Who, but I think there's some charm to it. But the Rani and Mal have a little bit of a history, so it's nice to see them meet face to face, and they actually talked a little bit, and I think it was sort of nice. And it didn't add a whole lot, but it's nice to see a little bit more right there, so well done.
Yeah, it's extremely surprising to me that the Rani actually remembers Mal. But hey, I guess he had to pretend to be her for a little bit. And I still say that's absolutely hilarious. And that alone is well worth the watch in regards to Time and the Rani.
Yeah, and I personally have to say I really liked the Rani's characterization here. Like James said, I had some concerns last episode, but I thought she did a fantastic job with her character. You could feel the disdain dripping from her tongue when she was like trying to talk to this bunch of humans, like, oh, I lost the room with that one. Like, she was fun. You could tell that she had little interest in what the humans cared about or wanted. All she wanted was to work on her plan and potentially get the Doctor involved, because her plan, I think, was a beautifully audacious one.
She's almost as audacious as RTD. She doesn't quite get there, but she's trying.
Because, yeah, she wanted to break into the Underverse and unleash Omega, but there wasn't even the end goal, which I think is just so fun.
Yeah, whole plan, and it's a pity that it happened, because on the whole, I don't even know if it's all that much of a negative. No, maybe all of reality would have died, but maybe this would have been more interesting and reality gets to die. I mean, I'm pretty sure the Rani even said it should leave the Earth untouched as long as he is allowed to regenerate Gallifrey. But the point is, her plan was to find Omega's body, the first Time Lord, however you'd like to phrase it. And for the record, as we kind of suspected, she doesn't actually give a damn about Omega himself. She only wants to use the body, dead or alive, as a genetic bank to resurrect the Time Lords and bring back Gallifrey. Which, hey, why not? As she said to the Doctor, the Time Lords never liked me, something to that effect, so we can remake them basically in their image. And again, she wanted to work with the Doctor on this. As she's trying to tell the Doctor, stop talking to the humans like you're one of them, you're a Time Lord, act like it. Now, of course, to her that means being dismissive of all human concerns and not giving a damn about them. But she's not wrong. On some level, the Doctor knows he's a Time Lord, and he seems to know that there is some type of responsibility that comes with that. And he did seem, for a little bit, to be genuinely interested in seeing Omega again. No, it's never gone well for him when he's seen him. At least in the occasions we've seen. We haven't seen any of the Big Finish stuff. But nonetheless, he was still interested. And I appreciate that they threw that in when they didn't really need to, but I liked it nonetheless.
Yeah, and the whole reason that she wants to do this, and I found it amusing on a side note, that she didn't care whether or not Omega was dead or alive or what condition he was in. All she needed was the genetic material. So, typical scientifically minded Rani doesn't need him alive or anything, doesn't need him to worship, just needs the material and then she's good to go. Now, it could be argued that she bit off a bit more than she could chew, or maybe something bit off more than they could chew. But hey, who's to say?
Well, not more than they could chew because she was just eating.
Well, not the time ring, but...
Yeah, she was eating quicker than that one guy was eating by the Jocelyn. Hashtag the 8 Doctors if you don't know the reference.
It was impressive. But apparently, according to the Doctor, Time Lords cannot procreate. They are tall and infertile. And the whole reason, I'll be honest, sort of eludes me. Because when it came up, James and I both thought, more James because he knows a little more about this lore than I do, there is sort of an oblique reference to looms, which is related to Longbow, a classic Doctor Who novel, a controversial novel. And that's what he thought, and I thought it was a reference to. But it seems to be connected to some type of, what was it called, a genetic explosion. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure what they're referring to. It seems like, at least the way the Doctor phrases it, it seems like Time Lords could have children at some point, but there's some type of explosion, some type of genetic explosion happened, and then it cast out the Time Lords to become infertile. That's what it sounds like, the way the Doctor said it. And the Rani wasn't disputing anything that the Doctor said. So they needed genetic material from Omega to sort of reconstruct the Time Lords and, in turn, reconstruct Gallifrey. That was the Rani's plans. Which is why, on the side note, Poppy's existence was so, I guess, crucial to the Doctor, because it sort of proves that the Time Lords could have children. Though it's actually not clear to me how the Doctor knew Poppy was even his real kid, to be honest. Like, could it have just been part of the wish?
I mean, it was part of the wish because they would have disappeared if they hadn't been in the Zero room, which means they weren't fucking real. But we can talk about that in a bit. I loved the Rani when, I forget who suggested it, there were like 4,000 people in the room. But somebody said something and the Rani just looks dismissively at the Doctor. It sounds like they want us to mate. Which one, of course, reminded me of Dana. But two, again, she was so arrogantly like, hey, what the fuck, Arthur? You don't even know. And I don't know, her entire attitude on that scene was just amazing. I think it was easily one of my favorite parts of the episode on the whole. I don't know what else could actually really compare to it considering the episode. There's a couple of good scenes in the middle, maybe. But one of the only times I was actually legitimately excited during the episode and hopeful is when the Doctor said, oh, well, sterile, we can't actually have children. And I was thinking, oh, that means the looms. Because the idea of looms is one of those extremely controversial ideas in Doctor Who that has, as usual for Doctor Who canon, and I say canon loosely, been ignored by most other writers. Because we have flashbacks as the Doctor as a child, we have flashbacks of the Master as a child. We see all of these things, and the idea of looms, one of the main points of it is that no, Time Lords want children. That is part of the developmental cycle. But then Russell T Davies has this genetic explosion, and I agree, I don't know what this is talking about. This is related to the supposed genocide of the Time Lords, which at this point the only genocide that happened was when the Master somehow killed them, and Russell's tried how to make things like flux matter and to make the death of the Time Lords matter to the Doctor. At least he did a lot of that in Wild Blue Yonder in a very good scene. It's noticeable to me how he's never taken the time to actually explain how the Master did it, because even Russell T Davies probably doesn't know, and that's because Chibnall never knew. And I'm not going to start going into Chibnall hate right now, but that was lazy writing. But I guess Russell T Davies knows about lazy writing. So I'm not sure what this genetic explosion is talking about. If it's recent, if it's not recent, if it's somehow related to the Timeless Children thing, which the Rani sort of even know about. I'll point out the Doctor is even a Time Lord, so in some ways it wouldn't matter even if he and the Rani could have children. That wouldn't help anything. He's not actually a Time Lord. I don't know if the Rani knows that.
There's no way the Rani knows. Because if the Rani knew the Doctor wasn't the Time Lord, he would be locked up in the cage and the Rani would be doing experiments on him.
It's Tactoon all over again.
But well, actually, that's maybe Tactoon is the only incarnation of the Rani. I could buy it. In that case, she would know. But
yeah, I was about to say that doesn't actually work. But
I mean, what walk anymore? What does walk mean? Like,
I don't know. But if anybody knows what this is actually talking about, please let us know. I'm not sure what it's saying. I'm not sure what this is a reference to, if it is a reference to something. Obviously, he could have literally just gone with the looms thing. Like, you can mention things from books and bring it into the show. That's fine. You don't have to come up with something really strange enough the wall when looms are right there for the taking. Hashtag make it be looms, because that hashtag's really going to catch on.
And there was another interesting part of that conversation in which the Doctor states, and keep in mind that he's speaking not just to the Rani, but talking to a room full of unit people, like all the faces, like pretty much everyone's there. Anita probably has no idea about half of what he's talking about, but to be fair, she's grown in her experiences at the Time Hotel. But the Doctor states that he has the only TARDIS in existence. Now, I want to be very fair. One, that's not true. But in this case, that's okay because he might not want the Rani to know who else has a TARDIS. So I'm not criticizing that. But we just want to point out the Doctor does not have the only TARDIS in existence. Not remotely. So I'm assuming the Doctor knew he was lying. And like I said, in that case, it's okay. But just remember, the 14th Doctor, David Tennant, is on Earth somewhere. And he has a TARDIS. And not only that, but I'm pretty sure Clara has one too. Now, I'll be 1,000% honest. I remember very little about why Claire has a TARDIS. Like, I don't remember Face the Raven that well, and I don't remember a thing about, whether it be Hellbound. Yeah, because Heaven Sand was a good one, and Hellbound was a terrible one. I've only seen it once, and I don't remember a thing about it. Like, the Doctor shoots someone, and Clara becomes alive in the last second of her life or something. I don't know. Point is, I don't know why or how Clara has a TARDIS, but theoretically, she does. So, just pointing out that the Doctor is not the only one with a TARDIS. Apparently Susan might have one too, because it looked like she was communicating to the Doctor from the TARDIS. But hey, we literally might never know. So, what else?
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Master still has a TARDIS somewhere. We might have seen one previously in the Reviver series, but who can keep track of the Master and whatever they get up to?
Yeah, and I think it's a good time after praising the Rani and Archie Punjabi's performance, which again I thought was really good. I think it's really on point, and I think it really captured the essence of what I would expect from the Rani. After praising that, I think it's good to jump into one of the things that I think both of us probably disliked the most, and that would be not Poppy herself, but Belinda's relationship and feelings toward Poppy. And Poppy is apparently the daughter, at least right now, is the daughter of the Doctor and Belinda. A daughter produced, let's say it, I mean, theoretically, unless I'm missing something, that would have been an unwanted pregnancy that was forced upon her, and Belinda is fine with it. Like, she seems to love Poppy. In fact, her attitude toward Poppy was among one of the most annoying and rage-inducing things I've seen our season.
No, to me, it was absurdity. Now look, obviously I'm not a mother, I'm not a father, I don't have children. But neither does C. C just wakes up one day with the feelings that she has a child that was just wished into existence, and the child's not real. I know they try to give, I think, some half-ass explanation of why Poppy is here, but she was also a space baby. But the explanation was worse than why it was snoring around Ruby. And the thing is, I'm not even sure that was explained. I'm sure there's something to just write it off, and that's all this was. There's literally to fucking write it off. You use the same character, you gave her the same name, and you don't explain why she's the same in any way that matters. I don't know, that annoys me. But Belinda's attitude towards a child that she knows isn't actually hers. She literally was remembering last episode, oh wait, I never gave birth. I don't remember giving birth to this child. In all essence, as far as I could tell, this child doesn't exist. If they're going to disappear when the wish dissipated, which was something they had to do to get the world, to get the Earth back to normal, then the child would have disappeared. When something disappears, in a case like that, that means it's not real. Now, it could be real in other ways. Look at the characters we saw from Lux. They were in a fake reality, but they were real in the fake reality, and in fact, they somehow transcended that, as we saw in the credits. So yeah, so in some ways, Poppy is real, and maybe you should want to care about somehow keeping her alive, maybe, but why Belinda cared so much about this child who she didn't consent to having with somebody who she didn't consent to do anything with. And yet somehow the wish created by this apparently misogynist jackass Conrad, somehow because she dreamed that she had a child, she now wants to keep the child. None of that worked for me in the slightest. I did not care for Belinda's love for Poppy. I did not care for the doctor's interest in Poppy, except maybe he thought, oh, maybe Timeless runs sterile. That would have been fine. Maybe that's the way he was thinking about it. But I don't know. That didn't work for me at all. I despise it. I think it is terrible messaging. I don't know what they're trying to say about morality, but whatever they're trying to say, it's completely wrong. At least it's completely not how I see things. You do not need to just love a child given to you through circumstances you didn't want, just because they happen to exist at the time. She literally was going to sacrifice her life forever for this child that she didn't consent to have. That is absurdity. And Belinda had such promise in the first couple of episodes of this series, but they have done nothing with her. And the way that this episode dealt with her was garbage. It took away all of her independence. It took away literally her saying whether she's going to have a child or not. And I know at the end of the episode, they were like, oh no, yeah, I have a child. I had it with, what was the guy's name? Alfredo? I don't remember. Point is,
It's Richie.
Richie, okay. That yes, she consented to have a child with this guy named Richie, blah blah. And it was very cutesy and whatnot. But no, I'm not buying it. The only reason that Poppy exists in that reality is because Poppy existed in the wish reality, which wasn't real. So no matter how you slice it, Poppy is now a mother to a child she never consented to have. No matter how happy she thinks she is now, it wasn't her choice. And I don't know, that whole subplot, that whole main part of the episode after they dealt with the Rani and Omega was just trash. And I despised it.
Honestly, I think James pretty much covered it. She never consented to have this child. Now, I'm not going to say that the doctor raped Belinda because it didn't really happen that way, but Belinda was violated. She was given an unwanted child, which is sort of retconned to always be her child. It just didn't feel right. I didn't care for it, and I do think it's among one of the low points for this episode. And it just amazes me that you can have that in this episode, and you still see some people saying it's like a really good finale. It just, honestly, it blows my mind. Like, if you think about it for more than 15 seconds, it's not a feel-good story. She has no agency in her own child, and that she's completely okay with it because it's her own child. Yeah, I did not care for it, and I'm not going to go on. I thought it was complete shit. It wasn't good, and it should have been there. And I guess it's a good thing that Poppy's such a cute kid or something. I don't know. I just don't care. I mean, honestly, I'm happy that they used Poppy that way as opposed to some of the other ways they could have used her. But yeah, whatever. I just did not care much for that whatsoever.
And speaking of Poppy, it's kind of hilarious. At the end of the episode, we see the doctors con Poppy to reveal sadly to him that Poppy is 100% human. And yeah, I'm sure he was a little heartbroken about that. He seemed that he wasn't happy, which is whatever. I kind of get it. But he literally scanned her right in front of Belinda when Belinda went off on him, just scanning her without permission in the robot revolution. And yet she's okay with the doctor scanning her child who you think she might care more about than herself without permission. Now, maybe that did it happen in this quote-unquote reality? Because reality shifted, 2 times during this episode?
Yeah, I think 2 sounds right.
So maybe that didn't happen. Maybe she's okay with somebody being violated in this type of way. But the thing is, Belinda had a point in the robot revolution. And now she's okay with the doctor doing the same thing she shouted at him for to her own supposed child. So I guess in this reality, Belinda just doesn't give a damn anymore. So much for her agency, as Michael was saying.
And moving on to Omega, we talked in our last discussion about how, despite the fact that the Rani is attempting to bring Omega back from the Underverse, how Omega may not be all that relevant to the finale. Like, yeah, it was a nice surprise reveal. She wants to bring back Omega, and we didn't know the full extent to her plans. But we said then that Omega may not play a huge part, and hey, I think largely we were right. Now, Omega does return for like the whole of, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes. He's like this giant mummified thing. And the Doctor has some type of line like, oh, he was in a land of myth and he himself became a myth or something like that. I don't think it's largely relevant. But here's like this large mummy type thing. He sort of ate the Rani, literally the Rani, or at least Archie Punjabi's rendition. Mrs. Flowers did too, but she survived. She actually used the time ring to get away. Side note, that's the last we see of Mrs. Flood. So Mrs. Flood is still out there. So that's something to look forward to. I always like Mrs. Flood. I think James does too. So, I mean, it's something to look forward to if she happens to come back at some point. But Archie Punjabi's Rani gets eaten by Omega. So, theoretically, as far as we know, she's gone, which is disappointing. And then after that happens, the Doctor is able to force Omega back through this portal with the Vindicator, which, is nice and all. And I'm not even that torn up by it. Like, I'm not exactly impressed with how Omega is used in this episode, but because there's such a short segment, I do think it's fair to say that he didn't bastardize Omega as nearly as much as he did Sutag. So, I mean, that's like really small, faint praise, but hey, it's something. It could have been a lot worse, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, it really could have been a lot worse. As it was great what we got, but it was whatever. It didn't need to be Omega, that's the thing. I guess it needed to be for the Rani's plot. But what was the point of Russell T Davies bringing Omega back for that? Like, I don't know. I swear he did it right like this for the first time he was Rano. He used to bring back people with a plan. Now it's bringing back people because they happen to exist in the classic series. And I don't know. It's not good enough. It's not a good enough reason to do it. Omega eating the Rani also sucks because hypothetically that means Archie Punjabi won't be having any Big Finish audios. So I know Big Finish is sad about it, but I'm sure they could find some ways around it if they wanted to. And I suppose, technically speaking, we don't know what happened in between the end of the Interstellar Sound Contest and Westworld, so maybe there are all types of Rani adventures as Archie Punjabi, and Big Finish can delve into those. But I am quite happy that Mrs. Flat survived, and she was hilarious in this episode, as she usually always is. She just gets the time ring as Michael mentioned, then just laughed. But didn't try to help the Doctor stop Omega. Didn't seem all that bummed up, honestly, about her future incarnation getting eaten. Just gets the time ring and leaves. And you know what? I can kind of respect that. Sometimes you have to know when to forward them. And she obviously knew. So, yeah, gone. And she can fight another day. So I look forward to her return. And in the future, maybe it will explain why she breaks the fourth wall so often. I mean, it's Russell T Davies, and after this episode, any hopes I had are pretty low, but then again, things get so absurd at the end that he has to have a plan. I don't know, it's hard. It's not an easy thing right now to enjoy Doctor Who, at least the current rendition, because, like we were saying, maybe there is an overall plan, and maybe it can be solved, but it's not solved now, and now is what we have, so... At the end of the day, we can't wait for there to be answers, if there will be answers. And some of these things I'm not convinced he wants to answer, or he thinks don't need an answer. So I don't know. Hopefully when Mrs. Flood returns, if she returns, the actress is after all kind of elderly. I'm not saying that to be mean, but she is. Hopefully they answer that and explain why she's breaking the fourth wall so often and why the Doctor's breaking the fourth wall. I look forward to it because, like I said last time, you don't just have people break the fourth wall as a cutesy thing, especially when it's not just a cutesy thing anymore, it's literally story relevant and has been the last few seasons. So, looking forward to that. But yeah, so much for Punjabi. Hopefully she enjoys being eaten by Omega, I guess. These things happen.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that going like scene from scene in an episode like this seems, I don't know, irrelevant. A lot of this, we just try to touch on the big points and talk about what we either liked or really disliked. So I want to jump back a bit to one thing I sort of did like. The last episode ended with the Doctor falling to his quote-unquote death or what. I don't know what would have happened. Maybe he would have just woken up in the same loop. Because it's worth mentioning that while things looked terrible at the end of last episode, apparently that's how it always looks, because the same day sort of looped over and over again. Eventually, it would crack reality, but what we saw wasn't really reality cracking. Well, I mean, it sounds like it could have been, or should have been, based on what the Ranis were saying. But apparently, it's just like the same loop happening again and again, and eventually it will lead to breaking reality. So I guess I'm sort of confused about why that wasn't the break, but whatever. But he is saved from falling to death by the return of, like we mentioned earlier, Anita. And I'm not necessarily worried about, the magic door popping up and Anita coming to save the day. I mean, it seems like, I don't know, a bit too much. But I did like seeing Anita come back, and I liked the fact that she got the job at the Time Hotel being arguably relevant. And there was a nice scene in which Anita and the Doctor reconnected. And we hear that Anita actually was looking for the Doctor on her off time. We see like some flashbacks to previous episodes where Anita sort of looking through a time door at the scenes. We see, and James had to tell me this because I didn't recognize it, but we see Matt Smith in The Warden of River Sound, which is an episode that I don't have a ton of familiarity with. And we also see, somewhat amusingly enough, a scene from Dare the Daleks, with Third Doctor's toy. So we randomly see Porty for a little bit. So that was nice. And then we saw her looking in at the 15th Doctor dancing with Rogue from the episode, of course, Rogue. And her facial expression, because of course she had a deep interest in and deep affection for the Doctor. Now, I don't know why she did potentially consider the Doctor was bisexual, but maybe she just sensed the chemistry between Rogue and the Doctor was so much deeper than what she had with him. So maybe it just clicked like, oh, maybe that's why he had to leave. Maybe he wasn't into me that way. So I did like that scene, and we see her say that she moved on. Apparently she's pregnant with, I forget who her husband is. Doesn't really matter. But apparently she's pregnant. She moved on. The look on her face, I thought, was pure heartbreak, and I do think that among one of the most touching scenes. Like, that scene, to me, is far more touching than anything relating to Poppy. And I'm not saying there wasn't some potentially interesting things with the Doctor and Poppy, because it could have been. But Poppy as a character didn't do anything for me, and Poppy as like the Doctor's daughter didn't do anything for me. I just didn't feel any tight emotional connection. So I do think the scene between the Doctor and Anita was the most touching scene in the episode. So I do think that was nice. No, it didn't add a whole lot, but it added a little something, and I can respect that.
Personally, it was okay. I think Anita on the whole doesn't really do all that much. Like you were saying, all she does is hold the door open. Oh, and she mentions a bouse, which is an obvious reference to the Meep also mentioning a bouse, and a not so obvious reference, and maybe only I think this, although I see other people point out now and again, that Rogue also mentioned a new bouse in the Rogue episode. So yeah, there's some bouse. There's no point in theorizing about it, because maybe Russell T Davies doesn't know. Like, I don't know. Like, if he's going to answer things the way he's been answering them recently, then what's the point of theorizing? But yeah, there's apparently a bouse, and it might matter. Maybe it's Susan. That was the thought I had. But as for Anita herself, yeah, she existed. She was, as Anita always was, didn't seem to really care about anything that was happening, because that's how she did in the George of the World episode. But I did like seeing the scene showing the Third Doctor from Day of the Daleks. I thought that was kind of fun. On the whole, the Anita stuff was fine for me, and certainly is on the more positive parts of this episode, but it's nothing I would come back to the episode for, I'll phrase it that way.
Yeah, and we have a plan from UNIT to sort of infiltrate the Bone Palace. Like, Ruby's going to be using, was it some type of teleportation thing?
The Indigo thingy, which, while I haven't double-checked, I am almost positive it is the same teleportation device that we see Martha use back in the Stolen Earth. I believe there was also a Project Indigo. Now, she was using a very prototype version, whereas this looked a lot more fluid and it seemed to work a lot better than the version she had. But I'm almost positive it was the same thing, and if it's not, it was a wasted potential, but I think it is. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, and Ruby's going to go in and confront Conrad, which is a confrontation that some people might have been looking forward to. I mean, to be honest, I think they sort of handled it pretty well in Lucky Day at the end of the episode, so it's like whatever. And the Doctor's confronting the Rani and Omega. It's a fine plan. I mean, it works out. It's literally at that point that the episode, in a way, fixes all the big thoughts. The only thing now is that because Ruby ended the Wish Warlord, the question is Poppy going to continue existing? At this time, Poppy and Belinda are in, like James said, a zero room. So theoretically, sort of cut off from literally everything until the doors opened again. Apparently, has to cut off from aging. I'm not quite sure how that works, but whatever. And Ruby wishes that the Wish Warlord would be done with. So it is. She also makes a wish that Conrad is happy. So she has some nice compassion there. I mean, honestly, I'll say it again. I don't think Conrad's the big problem here. Like, obviously, I think the big problem is the Rani and such. And in fact, Ruby even says that, you know what, I wasn't fond of this warlord, but you could have made it a lot worse. It could have been a lot worse. I mean, keep in mind, for whatever else a warlord is, it's misogynistic. I mean, but women can still hold down jobs. For however terrible the warlord is, it's not racist, at least as far as anything we could tell. And I think that had to be there because of story elements, but it's also possible that Conrad himself isn't racist. So Ruby does sort of say, hey, it could have been worse. And they have a conversation. I don't think much of it matters. She wishes that he's happy. Then Doctor, Ruby go back to unit headquarters and they discover that Poppy is indeed still there. And this only matters because there's a random sequence of which Belinda and the Doctor are excited that Poppy's still there and they're going to travel the universe with the Dowager. And Ruby's, even at that point, the look on her face is, fuck it, what's wrong with you guys? Like, because one, it just feels out of place anyway. But then we get to the tragic scene where Poppy disappears and then Ruby is the only one who remembers her. The Doctor and Belinda forget. There's an empty cot in the tower, this is where Poppy used to be laying, and the Doctor and Belinda just completely forget her. And Ruby is in the position where she's the only one who remembers Poppy, and she goes into a speech at the unit headquarters like, hey, does anyone here remember Poppy? Honestly, it's sort of an awkward speech because it should have been clear to her that she is the only one who remembers for whatever reason. I was actually holding out hope that maybe Shirley might have remembered just because of the connection that she and Ruby had last episode, but it didn't come up and whatever. And then, like, the last third of the episode has to do with, because keep in mind, the Rani and Omega are done with, those are no longer thoughts. So the last third of the episode has to do with the Doctor trying to find a way to, I guess, get to another reality where Poppy is and bring her back. Just because, as Ruby says, like, you wouldn't leave one person behind. And since I don't care about Poppy and I don't care about almost any of that element, none of that really did anything for me. However, they did bring back another surprising face, and that would be Jodie Whittaker as a 13th Doctor. She pops up in the TARDIS to help the Doctor try to bring back Poppy. And I'm not at all a fan of the 13th Doctor. I found the era among one of the worst eras of Doctor Who. But I will admit, it was nice seeing the 13th Doctor again just for a brief moment. And I thought she was actually written decently well. So
yeah, no, the writing for her was actually pretty on point. She actually fought like the Doctor in ways that she, to me, very rarely did during her entire tenure. Which proves that in some ways, and this is actually true because we've seen enough of RTD2 to know that this isn't true, but some of the worst Russell T Davies writing is still better than some of the fast or certainly average Chapner writing. So there's always that to keep in your back pocket if you want. I don't have too much to say about George's appearance here, but she was written pretty well. She sounded like the Doctor. She had the enthusiasm you'd expect and that we've always seen from Geordie. So I just appreciate her here, and I know that she's been getting some big finish audios now, and I hope those are going well for her. I haven't heard any of them, but for as much as I didn't like the time that she was the Doctor, I've always been one of the people who say it's the writing, and if you give her good writers, if you give her good direction, she can be a good Doctor. At the end of the day, it doesn't really take all that much. So I hope she's been getting good writing for the big finish stuff she's been doing. I did quite like the part of the episode where Ruby was the only one who remembered Poppy, which is mostly because alternate universes are an old hat for her at this point. The Doctor doesn't even quite know why she's remembering the things she's remembering, because he didn't go through the 73 hours experience. She got that pleasure. But it obviously inoculated her to Wish Warlord and whatnot, and she was remembering Poppy when everybody else was just forgetting her. The entire sequence during that where you saw the Doctor and Belinda happily excited about going adventuring at first because they wanted to take Poppy, which is just, I hated it. But then when Poppy disappeared but they were still happy to go, I was in the back of my mind wondering if if it was somehow planned by the Doctor who wanted to whisk away Poppy so he could still travel with Belinda. It could have worked in some interesting, very dark ways, but nonetheless, that part was a pretty fun part of the episode. I didn't care when people got the memories of actual reality back, but apparently Theo was too blue. That's important. And one person who was dead became alive again, which Belinda actually made a pretty funny crack about. But all the part before they remember Poppy existed, all that stuff is actually on the whole kind of good, and I liked that part of the episode a lot. It had the gold feel to it.
Yeah, and it does lead, I think. Well, it doesn't directly lead, but I'll be honest. I don't want to say the ending confused me, because it seems like the Doctor somehow uses his own regenerative energy. I'll be honest. I don't know exactly how it works. He uses energy to help power the TARDIS to crack reality. We actually see things cracking, and then the Doctor's in the field. She's I guess in the quote unquote right reality now, and Belinda has a kid that she's had her whole time. Her whole history is retconned. They show a lot of flashbacks to previous adventures, but now Belinda's saying, "Hey, I have to get home because Poppy's there and she's my daughter." And honestly, it just to me felt awkward. And again, since I don't care about Poppy and I don't care about Belinda, which is a shame because Belinda had the potential to be a better companion than Ruby. But I feel like they just sort of threw her whole character away with this.
Yes, but on the other hand, I'm not going to say they've rehabilitated Ruby, but she's been so interesting, even in this last two powder.
Yeah, actually, I think they have really helped. Ever since Lucky Day, Ruby has actually been interesting, which is strange to say, but there you go. Ruby has sort of upended Belinda, which I would not have expected. But the Doctor does have this line, and this is a moment on a side note that James mentioned earlier, in which the Doctor scans Poppy, and to ensure that she is entirely human. Apparently she is, so she's no longer the Doctor's daughter if she ever was. And everything is well with the Warlord. The Doctor's sad because he had a daughter. And it wasn't just that, but there was a potential, I guess, for Time Lords to go on in some form. And I think he just realized that, hey, that is all gone now. So Poppy's human, and like James said, the Doctor's memories are faulty now because he remembers all these things as we saw them. But that's not actually, I guess, how they happened. Or at least it's not how they happened now. So the Doctor says this pretty good line that we live through the slipstreams of time. Beautiful things can be forgotten and gone. So I do think it's a really nice line. And he sort of says goodbye to Belinda. And Belinda is like, hey, you are going to see me again. And Doctor's like, oh, not with this face. And then he goes off to regenerate alone. It's beautiful.
Not alone. He meets Joy again as his Tau. Very important.
Yeah, he goes into deep space and he's in front of Joy as this Tau. Of course, from Joy to the Warlord. And apparently he regenerates because he used his energy on the TARDIS. Again, it's not really clear to me why.
He was shifting reality just a minutia to bring Poppy back into existence.
Yeah, I know. It doesn't really seem worth it to me, but whatever.
I mean, it wasn't worth it. All of this pizza and sandwich, we were all the Doctor's children. I know that I'm sure it's supposed to be touching. By the way, the music in this episode sucked. Usually, I don't say that about Maury Gold's music. I actually, on the whole, quite like his music. But the musical choices, probably this whole season, but I've mostly noticed it these last two episodes, way, way, way too loud in places when it really didn't need to be. Back in the day, the I Am the Doctor for Matt Smith, I don't remember the main theme for the 10th Doctor, but all of those themes for me worked. But in this episode, they seemed way out of place, way too loud, or sometimes way too whimsical. It didn't work for me, the music in this one.
Yeah, the music was really strange. It certainly seemed out of place at times, randomly majestic at times. It just didn't do it for me. But we do see one last surprising face, and no, it's not Susan because Susan doesn't appear because fuck Susan, I guess. We see the next Doctor because Gatwa regenerates. We had all that we needed from him. We got what? 18 episodes? 19 if you count the giggle?
I mean, if you were to say stories, it's even less because of the two powders.
Yeah, so we did not get much from him, which is a shame because I do think at moments Gatwa really did shine. But yeah, Gatwa's gone, and we have the next Doctor, maybe Billy Piper. And I'm not sure if I saw this leaked or if it's just a theory. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. I was really hoping it would happen, I didn't really care for it when they brought David Tennant back as a 14th Doctor, and I explained a little bit why some time ago. And I sort of softened down that view a little bit, but I do think if Billy Piper is going to be the 16th Doctor, I think that's 100% a major mistake. And I think it's a really bad idea. It's nothing against Billy Piper as an actress. I liked Rose. Rose is fine. It's the idea that it's it's keeping Doctor Who in the past. You need to move forward with Tennant as a 14th Doctor doing it once. At the time, maybe it was one of the better choices they could do. But bringing in a actress like Billie Piper, who was a companion for 2 seasons, 20 years ago now, I think it's a really, really terrible choice. And I'll be honest, Doctor Who maybe should just end for a bit. And if it comes back, they can retcon that. I honestly don't know. I just think it's a really, really bad choice. And I'll say this again, this might be controversial. I cannot believe there are people online saying it's a good choice. I don't know what drugs they're taking, but I don't have access to them. It's a terrible choice. It's keeping Doctor Who back in 2005. It's not working. It's just not working. And I wish they didn't do that. And that's all I have to say about that. Because I'm just thinking about it. I'm not even getting pissed off. I'm getting filled with despair. Because it really feels like the show should have ended 3-4 seasons ago now. Because if this is what it is, Billy Piper coming back, it's just not good.
This is one of those things where I get the feeling, again, the level of absurdity in this choice is off the charts. I cannot believe he had the balls to write this. And I'll just say, I assume he has a type of hypothetical plan to explain it, because I couldn't help but note the very first thing after the regeneration that the new Doctor says is, "Oh, hello," looking straight at the screen, breaking the fourth wall again. Now, maybe she was looking at Joy as the star, maybe. But a breaking of the fourth wall immediately after regeneration like this, to me, hypothetically, that means, again, he knows he's writing it. Hypothetically, he wants to actually lead somewhere with it. I think, at least that's what you would hope. That's how you write. You lead into things. And that's how he used to write. No, it wasn't amazing, but he would throw in the word Torchwood, he would throw in the beast disappearing, and then he would bring it together. But he doesn't do that anymore. Maybe he plans for eternity now, instead of just planning for the next season. I don't know. Maybe he wants another writer to resolve it, which is also lazy, by the way. There's the whole idea that maybe this isn't the Doctor. Maybe this is Rose Talley. I don't know how the fuck that's supposed to work. More likely, or maybe not more likely, but what I would prefer if this wasn't a regeneration is maybe this is either Bad Wolf or the Moment somehow. Either of those could, and I say this in the loosest of terms, make sense for various different reasons. What doesn't make sense to me is this somehow being Rose when Rose is in another dimension. Now, I'm sure he could write something that might sound reasonable, but honestly, knowing RTD, maybe he would even try and just say, yeah, it's Rose. I don't know. If it's an actual regeneration, then to me, what he has to do and what the next season has to do, and it has to be the next season. And sorry, I'm now so wrong. I'm saying what needs to happen. So please excuse that. But he needs to tie up the fourth wall breaks, maybe with a Master of Fiction type thing. He likes bringing people back. You can reach to the Troughton era. We, in fact, saw a little of Patrick Troughton in this episode, in the bit we saw from Day of the Daleks. Reach into the Troughton era, bring back the Master of Fiction, or the Master of the Fiction reality, whatever the exact name of the guy was. Bring him back, make this all have been some type of fictional reality. Because as Michael mentioned, when he was putting his regeneration into the TARDIS core and reality shattered, we literally saw as though we are looking at a glass screen, the glass shattered. So I don't know. Yes, reality shifted multiple times this episode. Maybe it doesn't matter because maybe this has all been a fictional reality anyway. Now, I almost thought that's what they're going to pull here when the Doctor woke up in the field, which turned out to have been the very nice-looking garden, nice-looking backyard of Belinda. I thought he was going to wake up near Susan in a new reality. That's where I thought it was going. Completely didn't go that way. They set up Susan in 2 episodes and didn't use her here. which is, again, more proof that Russell T Davies is planning something hypothetically. Surely that wasn't just to engender the thought of the Doctor caring he might have a child.
I'll have to be honest. I actually don't think Russell T Davies is planning anything. Maybe he has a plan, but without any dates. Like, you can have a plan on paper, but if there's no way to actually facilitate recording or like filming anything, I would argue it's not really a reasonable plan. I don't know. If he has a plan, then only he has it, and we might never see it. It's going to be like what Cartmore plan, the master plan from back in the day. Like, yeah, he might have a plan, but I'll be honest, at this point, I don't know if we'll ever see it.
I mean, the Cartmore master plan was always a bit overhyped by the fans anyway.
It may have been, but at this point, I really just don't know if RTD does have a plan. If we see some date in the next couple of months for like a surprise Christmas parcel, then that'd be great. But at this point, well, I'll say my final thoughts on that later. But yeah, I just don't see it. But that's all.
Yeah, maybe he does have a plan, but like I said, this is me as so, Rani. I'm just saying the reasonable thing to do. Now, I'm not saying this would make everybody happy, because it wouldn't. But one, that's not possible anyway. And two, Cohen says isn't making everyone happy. So either way, I think my way for the season to go is perfect. They should now put that into action. Of everything that has happened since the regeneration into the 14th Doctor have been a game, a trick. This episode said multiple times the gods played tricks. And I actually quite liked that line, and they used it a lot. And then they have this type of ending to the episode. Has everything since the 14th Doctor been a trick on the Doctor? I hope so. Like what I was saying, maybe the regenerations are true regenerations, but that they were planned or seeded by this thing playing a trick. By the Master of Fiction deciding, hey, this is a face that's recognizable from a story of the Doctor's past. Let's throw this on them. Let's throw the 14th Doctor. Let's redo the 10th Doctor. Let's throw Rose as the Doctor. And just fucking around. Are they going to play golf or are they going to fuck around? And the gods have decided to fuck around. Again, it wouldn't fix anything, but it would be an answer to things. And like I said, Russell T Davies had the whole South of the Odds of the Universe, and he hasn't really used that. Yeah, he had the Rani reference, the Doctor's toy and the gods, which again, I don't know how she knows that. I feel like there has to be more, and I feel like a good writer would make there be more, and I feel like everything we've seen are seeds for there being more. I just don't know if there's going to be more. And that's the problem. I sort of have doubts about this. It should be pretty easy. Maybe I sort of have the answers right, but it should be easy to point at the clues and say, yeah, maybe this means that. This is leading into this. I don't know. I don't think I should be wondering if there's even a plan. And I am, and that's a problem on the writing. And obviously people can like what they like, but I do not understand the people who say, hey, this has been a really good season. Maybe the best, maybe it has been a good season compared to the things we've gotten in the last 6 years, but this two-parter did not work for me on the whole. There are things I liked in it, and there are concepts that could be cool. I mean, obviously, again, he's setting up the boss. He has ideas. Whether he'll be able to, as Margaret said, bring them to fruition is a whole other thing. But it's obvious he has ideas. Hypothetically, unless he is just saying it in case he gets an idea later down the line. That's, I guess, how it's possible with this guy. I don't know, this season finale is just, I have to admit, it's not as master as I thought, but that's because he didn't bring Susan back.
Yeah, it's not master because he just ignored half the things that we were hoping would be answered.
Yeah, he ignored everything he set up. Well, he didn't ignore everything he set up, but he ignored a lot of what he set up, ergo making it less massy. But that's also just, maybe it's just a different way to write, but it's, to me, lazy. I don't know. A lot of this just didn't work for me. There were some good moments, but on the whole, I guess I'll phrase it this way, I don't get it. And until he ties it together, I'm probably not going to get it.
Yeah, like a final summary. The fourth wall breaks by the Rani, never explained. I mean, Mrs. Plaza's still out there, so maybe it will be explained in the future. I'll be honest, I don't think it's coming. So those were never explained. That's the problem. Rogue popping up in Wish Warlord, how he did that, why he did that, how he knew there's a universe, that was never explained. To be fair, I didn't expect Rogue to be in this episode. So that's not like a giant negative, but given that there wasn't as many points in this episode that they brought back, you could argue that maybe they could have fit him in somewhere. But you know what? I'm going to say it's not a negative or not a big one. Marvady did not come up in any capacity whatsoever. So I'm going to call that a major failing. Susan at the pain, I'm sort of torn on, because after she popped up in Interstellar Song Contest, I think it was a fair assumption that she would have more to do with the finale of this season. She also popped up for a few seconds in Wish World, but not only did she not pop up in this episode, she was even mentioned. And I'm going to say this, if there's not some secret Christmas pastor that stars Carol Ford, and this is literally all they do with Susan, then not only is that really bad writing, I think it's exceptionally disrespectful to Carol Ford and the character of Susan. Maybe they are going to do some more with her in the future. But I'll be honest, at this point, I don't have any faith about that. I have no faith. So they did have Susan here, which is fine. I prefer her to have more time. Like, I don't want her crammed into an episode with all this other stuff going on. But we got no Susan here. Maybe we'll in the future. I don't know. There's just a lot of things that this episode did let us in on. It's actually impressive how many questions it did answer, to be honest. Overall, there were some good things here. I really liked the Rani's portrayal here. I liked seeing Anita again. But overall, I would say I wasn't really feeling this one. And the few moments I enjoyed, I think were massively overshadowed by some of the major ailments. And it's sort of amusing that as much as I didn't care for the usage of Omega, I would even call it a major ailment. It's just like the thing as a whole, I just wasn't wowed by it. It's disappointing, and I was really hoping, like deep in my heart, I was hoping for something a little more conclusive, just something more. But then it ends with us getting Billy Piper potentially as a doctor, and again, I'm just done. Like it's a really bad choice, and I just wasn't feeling a lot of this, and it's disappointing. But there you go.
The only way mystery boxes work is if you answer the mysteries. And the problem is, we've seen RTD supposedly answer a mystery back in Empire of Death, and the answer to the mystery was Sith. Not only does he not answer some of these mysteries, he makes even more outlandish mysteries that might never have an answer. It baffles the mind. If you want to show off good writing skills, answer a mystery, make somebody satisfied, and then add on, but wait, there could be more. You don't just slap all of the mysteries aside and throw in like 3 other huge mysteries. At least I wouldn't think you do. Now, maybe he's not concerned about being seen as a good writer. I don't know. I'm not the arbiter of good writing, but I know this isn't it. You don't need to be the arbiter of good writing to know if something feels right to you or not. And yeah, it all comes down to opinion in some ways, obviously. But I didn't like how this went about any of the mysteries that it's supposedly set up. It's just kind of sad to see, honestly. Like I said, he never did the best things in his first era, but they were serviceable, and they made you feel like the time you invested in the season was worth it because it actually led somewhere. I don't feel like the time I invested in Series 1 and Series 2 of the Disney Plus era actually really led anywhere, except to excuses and non-explanations and to mysteries that he might never answer. And who wants to be led to that? Is that satisfying to watch? Not to me. I agree, there are some good things in this episode. There are things I like to see. But I can go back and watch a not great Matt Smith episode or a not great Capaldi episode and probably have loads more fun than I've ever had with almost any of these new episodes. And that's including some of the ones I even liked. I mean, I'd probably still take a lot of Matt Smith over rewatching Dad and Babel, even though I quite like Dad and Babel. There's just a whole new tone to the series that, like I said, maybe he plans on resolving, but until the actual resolves, it doesn't really make a difference what he has planned. So, it is, by the way, and this is going to be my last word on this, kind of hilarious how obvious it was that this episode could have ended with the Doctor regenerating and us not seeing who they regenerated into, because that would leave a supposedly, hypothetically, not really because he didn't answer anything, it would leave a clean slate in terms of the Doctor for another person to tackle down the line. Again, ignoring all the unanswered mysteries. But no, apparently it's Billy Piper, which is even more mystery. And yeah, I don't know. Hopefully the Master of the Land of Fiction comes back next season or next parcel. But yeah, until they do, I'm going to have to say this two-parter was audacious and had some things that were interesting. And I enjoyed the uses of the bone creatures, and they did actually explain them. So I'll give them props for that. But I could have done without all of this, basically. There's so little actually to save and rewatch this two-parter for. And yeah, I don't know, it's been an interesting ride so far in the Disney Plus era, but I don't know if it's been good, and certainly I would hope for better than this. I'll phrase it that way.
Yeah, and I think that's probably all we have to say about the reality war. We might do some type of wrap-up in the future about the season as a whole, or maybe the last couple of seasons. But I just found it disappointing, and this might sound overdramatic. I don't want to talk about it anymore. There were some gold parts, but it was overshadowed by a bunch of shitty stuff, and I just find myself somewhat disinterested. I hope it can work out, but yeah, I don't know. But any other final thoughts on this one, James?
Not really. I'll paraphrase a funny Twitter post I saw. Don't you think RTD looks tired?
Lars, yes.
And it's funny that we mentioned that because this season's over, but obviously we're not over. We continue on. This was bad, but not bad enough for us to go into hiatus again. So, upcoming, we have already announced that we've watched them, so this isn't out that spoilery. Upcoming, we will have a discussion on the Christmas Invasion, the first fall story starring David Tennant as the 10th Doctor. And we've rewatched it a few weeks back, maybe even a month back. Point is, we have the discussion done. We are in the process of editing it. And it was Russell T Davies, but it's damn good writing. Look, for anybody who has not seen the original Reviver series that Russell T Davies wrote, where he was showrunner for the first 4 seasons, I know it's an investment. I know it's 20 years old at this point. But if you were wondering why anybody was excited that RTD came back as a writer, go watch the first 4 seasons of the Revival of Doctor Who. And yet there are going to be episodes that aren't good. But it had some damn good writing, and the Christmas Invasion, on the whole, is damn good writing. It has amazing characterization that nothing in the RTD2 era, except maybe with some of the Ruby stuff. But nonetheless, we have that upcoming. We also have a second Doctor story upcoming, The Ice Warriors, which is the first appearance of the Ice Warriors. So, won't that be fun? So yeah, there's good Doctor Who out there. It's just not been, frankly, these last few series. I mean, there are some jams in there, some good things that I could go back and watch and enjoy. But the overarching hypothetical plan, until that's actually done with and resolved and has an answer that you can actually see, it's been less than worthless, frankly.
But as always, that's just what we thought about this one. If you have drastically different takes, please let us know below here on YouTube, or you could reach out to us on Twitter, where I imagine everyone is in the front trying to get their thoughts in. So, would love to have a conversation about this one. But yeah, that's all we've got. You have been listening to the Brothers Mahoney. This is Michael.
And I've been James.
Thanks very much. Have yourself a great night.